Well, hello everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here at the Nottingham College. There are all kinds of reasons why it's a joy to be here. It's one of my occasional trips back to Nottingham, having grown up here actually in Hyson Green, but which I have some more to say in a moment. But I think more excitingly for me, I've just come from watching a play put on by some of the students here for a national competition. And the power and the energy and the enthusiasm I just observed takes me back to my days at school. My days were at school in Nottingham. I went to a school called High Pavement. This is the old paviour's tie, which I managed to find in my closet before coming over here today. And I stayed in a hotel on High Pavement, which is where the school originally started, before walking down here to meet everybody, just to demonstrate how history changes. My old school, which was in a church and a chapel, is now a pitcher and piano. I just realised how life has changed. And that's a background really for something I wanted to say to everybody, which is just about you and your opportunities. Imagine what it was like for me growing up, as I've said, in Hyson Green all that time ago, thinking about my ambitions, what I was going to do and so on, and struggling, I'll be honest, to get guidance on what was possible. And my purpose today is to say to you, you can go as high as your aspirations and your talents will enable you to do. And I'm going to give you some evidence for that rather bold assertion. So I'm going to do it by talking about what everybody these days in the cliche world calls a journey, but I haven't had a journey, I've had an adventure. I am now His Majesty's Lord Lieutenant, which means that I am his representative in the capital city, all 32 boroughs of Greater London. It's 8 or 9 million people, and I have about 110 deputies who help me do the King's bidding, the monarch's bidding, which is to help make sure that people feel part of this country, they feel the community, and they feel bound together. So I spend a lot of my time with members of the royal family, and you may have seen me from time to time on television. You probably won't have noticed me because there are more interesting people to see, but I have been on television a lot. I was very privileged to go to the coronation, which was a very, very amazing, exciting day. I sat about 10 feet away from the King's coronation chair throughout the whole service, wondering how a boy from Hyson Green ended up in that particular position. Also, I have done lots of other things. I'm very proud to say I've got an honorary degree from Nottingham Trent University. I've got various other degrees from other universities. My wife and I gave, rather foolishly when I look back on it now, most of our money to my alma mater at Cambridge, and endowed the library, the Olisa library. So you get the general idea of me and the things that I do today, and I can imagine what you're already thinking. This man, probably his father would have been perhaps an ambassador, perhaps a corrupt ambassador, maybe he was a barrister or something. Well, let me just show you the house that I grew up in. It's in Hyson Green, as I mentioned before, 2 up, 2 down. And I went to local school there, junior school, and I made it to, as I've said already, to High Pavement. Those of you who know that area, Hyson Green that is, you may or may not know things about the properties today, but when I was there, and this is one of those things that young people find hard to believe in the 21st century, the only toilet we had in the house was outside the house, and the only bath we had hung on the wall outside the toilet. And to have a bath, we have to take the bath out, carry it into the scullery, fill it with hot water from a rather odd gas geyser device, have a bath, take it back out, hang it on the wall, nip to the loo because it'd be a wasted opportunity otherwise, then go back in again and lock the door. So that's where I began, and I've shown you where I am today. And so that raises a very big question, which is how do you go from, in my case, Brushfield Street, up to hanging out, as it were, with members of the royal family, etc. That's the big question. And the answer to that, of course, is partly, obviously, education. And so what you're doing today is really, really important. I studied at school. I studied fairly hard at school. I wouldn't want to overstate the degree of hard work that I put in, but I did study. I quite enjoyed studying, and I did fairly well, and I went on to get some jobs. And education and employment are the 2 big drivers of anybody's success. But what's wrong with this picture is I've drawn a straight line between Hyson Green and the life I lead today. And the reality is, it's in fact, as you can see here, a wobbly line. There are good things that happen to you and bad things that happen to you. And when you think about bad things that happen to you, there is a great danger, which is that you will blame other people for them. Let me tell you, when bad things have happened to me, it's largely been my own fault. When good things have happened to me, though, I like to think that sometimes it's also been my talent that made that possible. One of the things that I've done over that wobbly line is to try to give back. I attribute much of my success in life to the kindness of strangers. People going out of their way for no reason other than they can help somebody to help me. What I observe with a lot of people is they rebuff opportunities that are given to them by strangers on the grounds that they must be weird, they must be perverts, there's something odd about them, there's something dangerous about them. No, lots of people want to help other people. And I have, as you've just seen on the chart before, I have done a lot of pro bono things, leading charities, working for the government in regulatory responsibilities. I'm one of the people that helped sort out the MP's expenses scandal, for example, giving back to my country as well as receiving things. And that's a theme that's very, very important to me. But the point that I was making was the good things that happen to me are sometimes because someone has helped me and sometimes because I've been talented. But it's certainly not all down to my talent. And the bad things that have happened to me are often because it's been down to my stupidity, I've made a bad choice or whatever. And I've learned a very important thing in life, which is when things don't go well, don't blame everybody else. And when things do go well, don't try and take all the credit for yourself. That isn't a reality of life. So a big message there, as it were, on that wobbly line. But I'm an old man. It was a very long time ago that I was at High Pavement when it was a school out in Bestwood Estate. And things have changed a great deal. And so another big challenge for young people, you at this stage in your education, is not to look around you and see what's happening at the moment and try and form big life-forming decisions. Think about what it might be like in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Actually, it isn't possible to work out what life might be like in 10, 20, 30, 40 years. So rather more importantly, assume that it's going to be very different and don't get yourself stuck in a rut which is relevant to just to today. I had ridiculous ambitions when I was at school. I had slightly less ridiculous ones when I was at university. And all that's happened is I've exceeded them, actually not being a spaceman, but everything else, I've exceeded them over time because the world has been kind to me for the reason I was just saying. And I make the point to you, it is the same thing, it will be the same thing for you. Don't get stuck in a rut in the year that you're thinking about. Think 5 and 10 and 20 years. And how can you do that? As I say, you can't predict the future. You can't work that out. So a different way of doing it is to say to yourself, when I am a grandparent, so 40, 50 years later, what kind of life do I want to look back on? What would give me a real thrill to make me feel that I've made a fundamental difference? And that starts to set your mind on the values that matter to you about yourself and about your future. And I can only give you that useful hint and wrap that up by saying what you really need to think about is your heart and not your head. And so just think about what it would be like to be an old man or woman at my age, and you look back and you say, it's not been a bad life. It's about your core personal values. In my case, my core personal values, as I think I've told you now, is first of all, do my best at work, based on my education and the things that my mother taught me, which is always to try to do my best, but also to give back. And I was privileged a few years ago to get an official coat of arms, which you can see here rather splendidly. You'll be pleased to know we haven't got time to go through the explanation of everything, but you'll see an oak leaf in there, which implies Sherwood Forest, and my wife's maiden name, which is Sherwood, and therefore the 2 oak leaves, 1 for each of them. I won't go through it all. What I did want to focus on, though, because it's relevant to you, is my motto. My motto is do well, i.e. do my very best at everything I try to do, and do good. Give back to other people. Do well, do good. And what I would encourage you to do as you think about your own life and aspirations, and if you take the lessons, the messages from my own story, my adventure, set your sights high, imagine what it's going to be like when you are a grandparent and you look back and say, those last 50 years were brilliant, but what will your motto be? The big question I'm going to leave you with, your homework assignment, is just to think through, if you had your coat of arms and you put your motto on the bottom of it, it would describe what your heart is telling you you should be and you should do. What would that be? So, big question for you. How far can you go? Actually, based on my story and that of many, many, many other people in this country, from all kinds of different backgrounds, you can go as far as your talents and your aspirations will take you. And with that message, I'll say goodbye. Thank you.